A lot of realtors don't know about social media strategies, right? For $4,500, you can get 10 reels that we're going to make for you. I know enough to know that that's not going to get you any results. You don't want to just build your business on social media. How are you going to communicate with those people consistently? And really an email list, funneling them into an email list is the way to do that.
Today, we're going to be talking to a real estate agent couple that left the city. So they left Toronto, they took out a loan from their parents, they started an email distribution list, and they were able to build their business to be able to sell close to $100 million in a single year. Welcome to the Full Out Real Estate Agent podcast. I'm your host, Mark Ferris. Today, we're going to be talking to Chuck and Melissa Charlton. Chuck and Melissa, welcome to the call.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
So guys, really excited to find out what this email distribution list is that you really helped to grow your business. But before we get into that, can you share a little bit about your backstory and, where this loan came in and, how you guys were able to start your real estate business, leaving the city of Toronto and, heading about 30 minutes outside of the city of Toronto and starting as real estate agents? Maybe you can share the backstory.
Sure. Yeah, I was a licensed assistant with another agent. It was just a great chance to learn from him in the first couple of years. And then we made a decision we're going to move to Milton. But when that happened, we made enough to get by, but we had no savings. Like we were almost aspiring to zero. And so I came to my parents and I said, we need $20,000 to buy business cards and for sale signs. And you could just see the look in my dad's eyes, like, I don't know if I'm ever going to get this money back, but one day you'll have it anyway. So here you go, kind of thing. And then within the first year of us moving to a town where we knew nobody, had no business momentum, it was a complete standing start. We paid them back, and to this day, all the things that accolades and top 1% in the country and all that kind of stuff, it still doesn't match the feeling that I had to give him that money back to say, you know what, we did okay here.
Melissa, how was that for you when Chuck, went to his parents? Were you in the room when he asked for it? And like, how was that for you going through that at the very beginning?
I don't think I was in the room, but when you're young and you just have that blind confidence that somehow everything is going to work out, like there was no doubt in my mind that that money would be paid back because we had no choice but to be successful because the alternative was like you're going to be on the street, right? So,
It
didn't even, it's like, yeah, we had to make it
Yeah.
happen. There's no choice.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I think that, you couldn't fail. I think that's a very strong start to, in any sort of business. And I can really relate to that story because I had to go to Joanne, not my parents. I went to Joanna's parents and I said, I need to borrow $1,000 for a week because we have a check coming in and we need to make our mortgage payment. And so I can definitely relate to that. And I can also relate the feeling of giving it back as well. So maybe you can continue on with the story. So you were able to pay him back, which is wonderful. You guys believed in yourselves at the beginning, both of you, which is, a couple starting together. I do say that in real estate that having supportive spouse is it's a pivotal part to starting in real estate. But you guys are actually partners and working together, supporting each other, which Joanna and I, it's the same thing when we started as well. So it gave you guys a real, we'll just say an advantage, although at the time maybe it didn't feel like an advantage because you guys are figuring out how to work together as well. But maybe you could share that, so you're able to pay back. You guys are starting as a partnership. You guys are married, and maybe you can continue on with the story and how you guys became successful.
Yeah, for us in the first few years, I think about like a rocket ship. Like 80% of the fuel is used just to get off the tarmac, right? It's like all the momentum once it's there carries you. But we started with a postcard. It was just a free report on neighborhood house prices. Ended up collecting a list of a few hundred people. We were the first people in a group, kind of a test group of 100 people to get a listing from this. And that started the momentum. We knew that we had to do something different, unique. and everything was based on direct response marketing, right? We
Mm.
didn't have a brand, so it was just about providing good information, being good with our tracking, and just following up diligently. I mean, that's how everything started in Milton. And in a community that was small enough, and it was early days of the internet, and nobody was really, everyone's website looked like a glorified business card, and we were actually putting stuff out there that, one of the first ones on YouTube before Google bought it. And so, we've always tried to kind of leverage the kind of technology, and like high tech, high touch, I guess, has always been what we've tried to do.
Yeah, and you guys, that's one thing that from our many conversations through the years, that's you guys have always been at the cusp of technology. Now, for the listeners out there that aren't really familiar with what direct response marketing means, can you kind of simply explain it for the listeners?
Yeah,
Like,
I would
just at a
say,
simple high level, what is like direct response marketing? What is that?
well, I think it's about, at its core, what you're looking for is some kind of an action. We say call to action all the time, but a direct response offer doesn't necessarily depend on the brand as much as it does the value offering
Yeah.
there, and so it's very trackable. So if we sent 2,000 postcards and got 86 responses, I mean that's different from a trackability standpoint than a billboard that, like, you don't know how many people saw it. You don't know. I remember I heard a quote from P.T. Barnum from Barnum and Bailey, and he says, half my marketing doesn't work. I just don't know which half, right? And so the idea was is we could hold each dollar and each penny accountable to a specific result in a direct response style of marketing, because by nature you're getting a number and you're getting a result that you're looking for.
Hmm. So what, or go ahead, finish your thought.
No, that was
Yeah.
about it. It
So,
doesn't depend on us getting famous as much as it does, like, okay, here's something that we think you'd like.
Hmm.
Would you
right.
like a cookie off the plate kind of thing?
Yeah. So can you maybe share what an example, like a practical direct response marketing ad would look like? Say, it's online, just pick your platform and say what would be kind of a hook or, maybe a lead magnet, what like that you would use to be able to track that. Because that's a great example, like postcards, for example. You send out, 1,000, you get X responses. So you can, that's more measurable than, we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in billboards
Yeah.
that we can track to a certain degree, but we also know that there's it's more like branding. I see you everywhere, and then they're maybe going to click on a direct response ad. But for direct response, maybe you could share like an example and pick your platform, whether it's YouTube or Google, and what would say a hook be that somebody would want to click on that to be able to get for you to get their information.
Yeah, well, I think the hook and the title and everything is mostly around entering the conversation going on in someone's head, and there's different ways to do it, but the classic one on the internet is a squeeze page, right? Where say go to Barrie House Prices or MiltonHousePrices.com, and then there'd just be a title and there'd be just one thing to do there. So the problem sometimes with a lot of websites is there's hundreds of things that they can do, and so they end up kind of doing nothing, right? So
Right.
a squeeze page is about a single decision, is that here's the information, would you like it or not? Leave your name and email. And
Mm.
so the more you can boil that down, the simplicity of that creates, I think, clarity in the actual response. Are they going to put information in and trade their anonymous status for this perceived benefit, or are they not? And either way, it's okay, but it's like you can track that and see how it's working.
So,
Yeah.
Mark, like a current example of something like that we use now would be an ad that says, if you're looking for seller leads, instead of saying like free home evaluation, which does work, our approach is to say, how to sell your home for top dollar fast. So when
Mm.
they click on that ad and we get their information, they're willing to trade their information for what we're going to give them. And then we send them a top dollar book, right?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
then from there, we can start the conversation about what they're up to. So it's kind of a backdoor way of going about it.
You're just fishing more upstream too, right? You
Mhm.
tend to get people earlier in the process.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's all based around this principle that Robert Cialdini, in his book Influence, talks about the rule of reciprocity.
Hmm.
It's like you give first, you
Yeah.
offer something, right? And you give, and then you'll receive. And I think that's where you nailed it, I think, in regards to, like, say, direct responses. You're offering something,
Yeah.
right? And so it's a trade-off there on that. So I think that's really great example of, say, like a squeeze page that you had mentioned in regards to, like, simplifying the message and doing one thing and one offer. And so this is something that we learned through the years of spending millions of dollars as well. Instead of having like multiple messages, it's like hone in on the one
Hmm.
message and just go all in on that one. And I
Hmm.
think that's more of a, I'd say it's more of a mature move, because as marketing people, it's easy to get really complex and cute.
Yeah.
But the more simple, I don't know, have you found that the more simple you are,
Yeah.
the higher the response is?
It
Like
is for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
what
Um,
what I found over the years too, Chuck, I'll let you go in a sec. But speaking to what Mark was saying, what I found over the years too with direct response marketing, your offer better be really strong
Yeah.
and really well phrased. Like the copy has to be correct, because for someone nowadays to willingly leave their information, willingly
Mm,
leave their name, their email,
yeah.
like the ad itself has to be really outstanding.
Mm, yeah. Great suggestion there. Chuck, did you want to add something there?
well, going to what Melissa was saying, even the color sometimes of the button that they
Yeah.
press. I mean, even those can sometimes change a response rate by,
Hmm.
5-6%. So the little details matter. The only way to
Mm,
really figure that stuff out is just test.
Yes.
yeah, that's right. So now, are there any other kind of like key kind of, we'll say, key nuggets or ideas or key learnings that you've had? I mean, you guys are like masters at this, and like getting to the color, it just shows your commitment to excelling in that. Are there any, like, we'll say, any other, like, this was like very helpful when we're spending all this money on these
Mhm.
ads? Were there any other kind of key ideas that you could share with the listeners?
I
Melissa,
think
do you
it's
want?
important. We keep talking at the same time. I think it's important to leverage and learn from people who know more than yourselves. Like we're in real estate, we're not
Yeah.
direct response marketers, and for us, being introduced to Dean Jackson early in our career, who we continue to work with to this day, and he's the one who is writing the ads and who is setting up,
Mm,
everything on social media and how we're going to collect everything. So really to leverage someone else's knowledge and not trying to figure it out on your own. Like you'll
yeah.
save a lot of money if you just hire a professional,
Mhm.
a good one, because there's a lot of people who say they know and they don't.
This is such wisdom, and I want to share an example. We've spent millions of dollars with agencies through the years as
Yeah.
well, and I 100% agree with you. That most of them I
Yeah.
found, and I'm not knocking marketing people in general,
Yeah.
because there's a place for that, but
Yep.
when you go to a marketing agency, what I found, their number one mission is to make you feel like you don't know anything.
Yes. Yeah.
And I found that the reality is, when it came down to actual results, when we actually
Hmm.
hired them,
Hmm.
the results didn't match up with the promise at the
Yeah.
beginning. And
Yeah.
I found that we were going down these rabbit holes.
Yeah.
So getting wise counsel from somebody that has mastered it in that
Hmm.
niche,
Hmm.
because direct response marketing, it's very niche, and then you have
Hmm.
different platforms as well that you can even
Hmm.
go further down the hole of niching
Yeah.
into, and there's little subtleties with that.
Hmm.
So going to these market experts from the beginning and not getting caught up in going on this big agency where you're basically speaking with like frontline people that
Yeah.
just came out of university, they don't have the experience, right? And so just be very cautious of that, getting wise
Yeah.
counsel.
100%. Like even if you think, I mean, a lot of realtors don't know about social media strategies, right? So you go to an expert and you see these ads. Like I'm just seeing them now. They're coming in my inbox, and they're like, for $4,500, you can get 10 reels that we're gonna make for you, or whatever it is. Like this crazy number. And I know enough to know that that's not gonna get you any results, right? So going back to your point about hiring the right people, like definitely do your homework, look for inspiration or companies that work outside of real estate instead of just in real estate, and again, hold them accountable to their results.
Yeah. So, and you guys, I'd say as a couple, spending a lot of time with through the years, you guys have been, very generous with like sharing information, and you guys have a genuine care for your clients as well. I know you guys really focus on the customer service, which we were going to get into in a bit, and going after those 5-star reviews as well. That being said, this email list, I want to get a little bit more into that, because this is something that you guys have really niched in and you've really built on. Like, this isn't just an overnight thing. You've been working on this for years.
Yeah.
Can you maybe share what that email distribution list, how you started it, and then how it's kind of grown into really a monster of value? When I say, you've really built into something special, and it's really been kind of a foundational pillar of your business, which is, I think, is very unique, and it's not like a typical thing that an average real estate agent would do. So maybe you could share how you started that, and then how you've been able to build that through the years.
Yeah, I think a natural byproduct of what we've been discussing is that you end up collecting a fair amount of information, right? You collect a lot of names and emails and phone numbers. And I remember clearly at one point when it was just Melissa and I, we had a stack of leads, people have filled in forms, and like we didn't know what to do with them. We couldn't keep up. Like, if you've ever seen the video of like I Love Lucy, when they're at the chocolate factory and the chocolate's coming faster than they can.
We're talking old school movie show there, Chuck, but
Yeah.
I think I remember seeing that one. Yeah.
And it's funny, the chocolates are coming so fast, they're stuffing them in their shirt and things like that. But that's what it felt like. It's you think too much business is like a thing that people would aspire to, but it's still a problem. You're still wasting opportunities.
Yes.
And so we said, okay, well, instead of trying to create this sifting and sorting system, which we didn't have the capacity to do, to figure out which ones were good or not, or kind of 5-star prospects, we said, well, why don't we just give them what we know that they want? And in this case, it was like homes. So, we took the first run of a few thousand people, and we said, okay, let's send an email out to all of them, and let's talk about, the 10 listings that came out yesterday. And so we just did a simple screen capture, like just kind of right on the computer, and then we just kind of say, this one little close to the train tracks, and this one looks like a good deal because the last sale was 10,000 more. And kept doing that. And what happened, actually, I mean, this is a lesson, anyone that wants to do this, is that the list dropped by 20%. We had a ton of unsubscribes.
Yeah.
And so you look at that and you say, wow, like that, maybe I shouldn't be doing
Stop.
that. But then,
Stop doing this. Good idea, Chuck. We're losing emails here. What's going on?
Yeah. On the other side of it, though, is that we had a lot of love letters that people said, this is amazing. This is like a dream come true for me. And that's how we built it, with the idea that, hey, like the information's out there, but somebody should, like, hopefully, like, you would appreciate somebody interpreting it for you. And so adding the context to it. And so the lesson from that was, you almost have to kind of piss off the 20% that don't matter to find the 20% that do. So it's like 60% we're kind of okay with it, we'll give it a shot. But like, you could run a really good business on that top 20% and just kind of catering to that audience. And so it's just kept on. I think we're entering year 15 of doing this 5 days a week. And we've done other, side things now. Like we have Sold Watch, which talks about the sales and the market activity, and the condo report. But Milton Daily Homes has been going for 15 years.
Wow.
And it's fun. It's become like a family. Like, people see me eating at a restaurant, and hey, I know you, and right. People say they watch me in bed together.
That's a little weird when they do that. But going back to something that I would want to know if I was a new agent, like, how do you build this list? Like, how do you build this email list of people? So when we started, 15 years ago, it was through Google AdWords. People were more willing to leave their email address, on a squeeze page. And now what we found is the cost per lead just got too high.
Yeah.
So we're leveraging ads on social media through Instagram and Facebook and funneling them into these email lists. I think something very important that Chuck and I have had conversations about is you don't want to just build your business on social media. Because
Yeah.
what we're seeing right now, even with TikTok being taken away, think
Yeah.
about how many agents have like a huge following. I
Yeah.
love TikTok, right? And then like if that's taken away, how are you going to communicate with those people consistently? And really an email list, funneling them into an email list is the way to do that.
Yeah.
You
Social
just,
media is rented land at the end of the day. Like
Yeah.
the email
yeah.
list is ours, right?
Yeah.
Well, and if you talk to all the top influencers, all of them say that the email list is the goal.
Yes.
If you have, say, courses or whatnot, email list is the goal because you nailed it. I mean, you get one, I mean, especially nowadays, I mean, you could be canceled and all of a sudden you get kicked off the platform. Like you
Yeah.
just say something maybe that somebody doesn't like and boom, like your business you nailed it, rented land. So building the email list is great and adding value is to me is just it's a win-win.
Yeah.
So is there a website or anything with this, or is it's just a straight email list that you're sending 5 days a week?
There is like typically we would send each episode to a specific page on the website.
Got it.
You have to be a little bit careful with the rules
Yes.
because you
Yeah.
can't advertise other people's listings
Yeah.
out in the open.
Yeah.
So it's designed to be a bit of a closed system. That's why you don't see me on social media reviewing properties. Right? You kind of keep it in a container.
Yeah.
So like for
Yeah, just
example,
the
on the Charlton Advantage web page, like there's a section where people can leave their email address for Milton Daily Homes, and then the information is really kind of kept behind closed doors,
Yeah.
where
Got
it's
it.
sent directly to their email, and that video 5 days a week is sent to their email.
And do you just pick like 10 random listings, say if there's like 20 or 30 that day that came on the market? Like, would you just pick, say, maximum 10? And then how long would these videos be?
Yeah, so the process in the morning, and this was really the vision for Daily Homes. It's like, let's imagine that somebody's just right beside me here and that we're looking at the listings together in the morning, right?
Yeah.
So, naturally, not every listing we're going to talk about. I might say, skip that, let's talk about this. And so I make
Yes.
notes every day, and this is what I want to talk about in the video. And
Smart.
and that's how it works. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, there could be a day where there's 10 listings. I talk about, 6 of them. There could be a list of
Got it.
50 and I talk about 2 of them, right? It depends.
Yeah. And then how long would the videos be approximately?
I
It
try to keep
depends?
it around like 3 to 6 minutes.
So good. Now, here's the question I think most people are asking. How on earth were you able to be so consistent for 15 years, doing it every day, 5 days a week for 15 years? Like, what is your secret sauce there to be able to just do it consistently like that?
Well, you could ask someone who exercises, or I mean, all of us have habits that we do
Yeah.
regularly, like whether it's eating breakfast or brushing our teeth or or going to the gym or whatever. So it just became something that I was very committed to in the beginning, that this was, it's like, I remember there was, I can't remember, he's a direct response guy, but he said, only make calls on the days you want to make sales. And I was like, kind of taking it, only make videos on days you want to make sales.
So good.
Right? So
Oh,
it
so
was,
good.
it was like that. It's like, let's do it 5 days a week. 7's a bit much. I don't want to do it on the weekends.
Yeah.
And then it's a rhythm. It feels like it's missing in my life if I don't do it on a day.
And what percentage of your business would you say would be coming from this list? Like, or how many sales, however you want to answer that, like how many sales a year approximately would you get? Just so that the agents can have context. You guys are running a massive business. Like you're one of the top in Canada. What are the results from doing that for 5 days a week for 15 years?
Melissa, do you know the answer?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Approximately. If you give
I
a
was
range.
just
I
I
mean,
was,
some of it is
yeah,
that past clients are part of
yeah,
it,
yeah.
so it's a
Yeah.
good way to stay in touch. But I would say a good solid like 20 to 25% of our
I
business
was
Yeah.
gonna say 30. I was gonna say
yeah.
30 between all the lists, like between Milton Daily Homes, the Milton Price Report, and the Milton Condo Report. So we have three email lists. Milton Daily Homes, which Chuck has been talking about, is the primary one,
Yeah.
and then the Milton Price Report and Milton Condo Report is more of a niche.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're pretty much looking at from a sales per year, you're looking at anywhere from what is that like 15, 20 million to like 30 million in sales volume a year, guys. So like this is we're talking about like excellent foundational pillar here to be able to just drive your business. But Chuck and Melissa, what I really like about it is you guys are doing something that everybody is looking for. They're looking for a guide to be able to tell them
Mm-hmm.
what's good and what's not good about an area. And to me, it's going to the heart of you guys in customer service and wanting to provide a great experience.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well, I think you build it based on what you'd want. I would love if somebody
yeah,
just sorted that stuff
Yeah.
out for
yeah.
me, right?
Mm-hmm.
No, 100%. I think this is a really good segue now to talk about your customer service and
Mm-hmm.
delivering this five-star experience that I see you guys, you guys talk a lot about that, and I know you
Mm-hmm.
guys are committed to your clients as well. What would you say are some of the things that you do and kind of your approach to delivering a great experience? I love that filter when you're looking at clients, like what would you want?
Mm-hmm.
But like, how do you approach this five-star great experience there when you're working with buyers and sellers in the Milton area, which is it's just outside of Toronto?
Go ahead, Melissa. I've been talking a
Okay.
lot. Yeah.
I'd say it's pretty equal, but everything is completely systematized, right? So we want
Yeah.
to make sure that each client experiences the same great experience. So for example, when a buyer comes to us and we've done a buyer presentation and they sign paperwork with us, it immediately triggers a plan, right? So beyond like what the agent is doing, the admin team is the one delivering little touch points, little surprise and delight moments. And this is even before they have purchased a home. We try and think of things of what they would need before they even need it. Like, for example, on move-in day, we show up with a survival kit of all the stuff that they forget when they move in, like toilet paper, flashlights, screwdriver, all the stuff that's packed away, along with a closing meal. We make sure to feed everyone who's there. And then beyond that, I mean, we have, and that's just one example of things that we do. And beyond that, we have a whole calendar of events that we do throughout the year with our clients who've already
Mhm.
purchased with us. So we're constantly trying to do nice things for them. Like we never want to call a client and ask for a referral or ask, are you ready to buy and sell now? Like that's just not
Right.
what we're going to do. We're going to continue to give. And it's worked out well because people think of us.
Yeah.
If you imagine like a theater performance, I think the way we deconstructed the process is that we kind of broke it into some stages. So the first stage is what we call like the honeymoon stage, which is the first 10 days, where they're just of their search or of the listing. So in a listing, we would send a little, we'd put it actually on the counter or in the fridge, a little survival kit for them. And kind of thinking about what's going on emotionally with them and then until the time when the house is under contract, um, conditional we would call it in Ontario, and then what happens during the conditional period after the sold sign goes up. There's a period
Mhm.
between sold and closing where you have opportunities to do things. So they're going to be packing, for example. So we have fragile stickers that we would send out, right? So they're not expensive, but they're things that people might need.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then after closing, we look at the next 90 days because a lot of realtors think the job stops on closing, but there's a
No.
lot of things that you can do after closing to really make an amazing experience. And I think, a lot of the people who interact with real estate agents think we're kind of out for a check. And it's like anything you do after closing
Mhm.
is like triple bonus air miles in
Yeah.
the relationship. It's
Mhm.
it's so much more value because they
Yeah.
they know that we kind of got what we wanted, which
Yeah.
was we got paid. But then, they know that anything after that is truly because we value the relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. It's well said.
And
Mhm.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
so going back to what I was saying about the theater, it's like we kind of deconstructed like what they're experiencing as an audience, but also what we had to do behind the curtain, what levers we had to pull, and
Mhm.
when things come out on stage, it was like we thought of that performance from and every single part of it can be
Yeah.
broken down.
Yeah.
Yeah. The worst thing an agent can do on closing is to not call them and then just basically
Mhm.
not connect for the next couple
Yeah.
years and then just call them and ask them if they're ready to list,
Yeah.
right? It's because people, it's interesting, you build such a strong bond with them that when you just go like cold turkey
Mhm.
with no sort of connection, it's kind of like it comes across exactly what you said,
Mhm.
that they were just in it for the commission check, and they didn't really they didn't really appreciate me of who I was, and the
Mhm.
relationship was just was monetary, and so I totally agree on that. Now, going back to the beginning, we'll call it the honeymoon stage.
Mhm.
This is something that is really important that I've found as well. It's like as soon as they sign up with you, that reinforcing that decision becomes pivotal.
Mhm.
So are there any things that you do, like as soon as a client says yes,
Mhm.
you guys are, I made a decision, you guys, I'm now going to work with you?
Mhm.
Mhm.
Well,
Yeah,
on the
that was
buy side, immediately, like after the buyer presentation, we book in market education with them,
Mm,
right? And
yeah,
market education is key. So we have an entire book, and we that we bring with us that day, where we say you can't buy a home that day. Market education is just to let
yeah,
you know about the different neighborhoods, what's in your price
yeah.
range, all that good stuff. And then we'll go back to the office and go through the book. So in the book, it has all the hidden costs when buying a home. So we'll take them through, land transfer tax and how much you should put aside for lawyers and all home inspection, all these things that they're not going to think of just beyond the buying process in this case. Um, so, kind of taking that educational approach, I think really reinforces why they chose you and how you're different.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah, that's really smart. So you go out and do the marketplace experience education
Mhm.
with them
Yeah.
first, and then you go back to the office after, and then you
Yeah.
continue to provide
Yeah.
more value there for them at that point.
Yeah, we have like a mock offer in there. Like anything that's coming from
Yeah.
that point to the time when they are firm on their home, it's in that book.
Mm. And do they come on formally as a client kind of after that marketplace education, or is that kind of like a before conversation?
Usually it happens after the buyer
Yeah.
presentation, but if
Yeah.
someone is on the fence, like
Yeah.
we're not gonna stronghold them into working with
Yeah.
us. So typically after market education, if they haven't signed with us during the initial consultation, then after market education,
Yeah.
that would be the time.
Well, to me, it's just your value, value, value instead of
Mhm.
like call me. Yeah. Call me when you see a house. I'm going to set you up on my automated list, and just call me. Okay.
Yeah.
Make sure you call me. And then
yeah.
they don't call them like two
Oh,
months later. They didn't connect with them that whole time. And then next thing you know, they bought a house and then they're upset. The agent's upset. It's like, why didn't you call me? I've been working with you. It's like, well, you just put me on an automated
yeah.
automated list and you expected me to call, but you actually didn't work for me. And I think that's what gives agents not a great name.
Yeah.
But you guys are going the extra mile. You're doing market. You're actually getting out. You're doing the tour,
Yeah.
marketplace education. You're going back. You're educating them even further. And
Yeah.
after you do that, I'm sure your clients are like, "Oh my goodness! Like you are so much different than everybody else out
Yeah.
there." I would think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's a
We,
slide in the listing or the
yeah.
buyer presentation about that. It's like it's the comparison of the taxi and limo because how do
Mhm.
Yeah.
most agents run their business? It's like a taxi cab, right? Is
Mm,
they want to get you
Mhm.
from A to B as quick as possible. You get out, you never see them again. And it's like we aspire to a
Mhm.
limousine type experience, which when do you take a limousine? Usually around a special occasion in your life, right? It's usually much more enjoyable.
yeah.
And when you get out, you want to tell everyone that you were in a limo. You want to post pictures on
Mm,
social media. You want to share that that was the kind of thing that you went through. So,
yeah.
um, yeah, it's just a completely different mindset. And
Yeah.
somebody who is more transactionally focused, it's like it doesn't exist in the same realm as that, right? It's just you have to be it to say something like that, or it just comes off the wrong way.
Yeah.
Yeah, you nailed it. I tell our agents that they should be moving like every few years just to experience moving
Mhm. Mhm.
because it is stressful.
Yeah.
And this is going back to what you were saying in regards to like the emotional roller coaster of
Mhm.
a client. And so that's something that we do as well as we track right from the beginning their emotional state, right? And so you can track each step along the way and then you can tie together these wows and maybe even some support to be
Mhm.
able to get ahead of that as well. But then systemizing of it is definitely what you said was really
Yeah.
important on that. Do you, Melissa, is there anything? I noticed you wanted to say something there. Add
Well,
something.
like, I think there's this notion amongst realtors, and especially if you're new in the business, that the job is just to help people buy and sell homes, like the process, that part of the job. And what we're talking about now, and the difference between, an average agent and someone who's created like a big business, is that we understand that that's only 20% of the
Mm,
business. 80% is the systems and the touch points and the keeping in touch and all these other things that you need to create an amazing experience. That's the business. That's what's going to attract more clients,
mm,
Yeah.
well
Well,
right?
that
said.
the strategic objective obviously is to have such good experience that they're they want to share it with other people,
Mm,
right? I mean, that's
yeah,
I mean, it's always cheaper for a business to attract repeat and referral customers than
Yeah.
to find new business,
yeah,
right? So, but I mean, yeah, I know what you're saying is that some agents just look at the core objective and say, okay,
Yeah.
well, that's the closest path to
Yeah.
making money. But I think the approach that we have is a bit different, that we look at it more long term, right? Is
Mhm.
that when you meet somebody and it's a great first meeting, like, why would I want to
yeah,
stop here, right? I want
yeah,
to be the lifetime consultant.
yeah, for sure. And I think you nailed it. It's like transactional versus like this is a human being. And
Mhm.
so this is where for us, like when we bring on agents, what the first thing we look for is do you have a genuine love of people?
Yeah.
Right. And it's not that weak, lovey dovey,
Yeah.
oh, I love people. It's
Yeah.
like one of the things that you guys and a lot of the top producers that I meet is like they have this like deep love for
Mhm.
their client and their reputation, and they
Yeah.
it bothers them at a very deep level. If they had
Mhm.
a 1-star review, it like hits them at their core. Like I'm sure if you guys had a 1-star review, it's like, oh, what happened?
Yeah.
I'm gonna like make the push the to the ends of the earth to pull that off, and I got to fix it. How am I going to fix it? Is that when you see some, or if you have, I'm not
Well,
sure, but what are your thoughts on that?
usually if we've gotten a poor review is from someone who never worked with us. It was probably a
Yeah,
competitor.
right. Oh, the other, yeah, the seller that you negotiated a better price for your buyer is
Yeah.
like, they came in and they gouged me and
Yeah.
undersold my house. Is like, I was representing the buyer. I
Yes.
wasn't
I did
representing
my
you to be
job.
mad at your agent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So absolutely. I mean, it goes back to the values. It goes back to, all the things that are important to us. And really, I mean, you have to sleep at night, right? And
Yeah.
how you do that is you really put their best interest first, like at the end of the day.
Yeah. And just know that your reputation is above any check.
Oh yeah.
I remember, guys, there was this one deal that there was an offer that came in and we were selling 2 lots. Now we were going through severance during
Mm-hmm.
this period and it was one plot of land, so it hadn't been severed yet. So it wasn't super clear, even though it was in the write-up on the
Mm-hmm.
listing, we were representing the seller. And the buyer came in with their agent. We talked about it with their agent that they're getting 2 lots. The buyer thought that they were getting 3 lots. The
Oh.
offer came in, and it went to my assistant, and I didn't review it, and it got sent back to the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is My problem is I didn't check it, and that's something that I normally would do. I didn't double check on it, and we should have circled it to make it super clear
Mm-hmm.
on, the survey. You go and attach it, and
Yeah.
it's super clear that this is what they're doing. And ultimately, I messed up in a big way. I was 100% me, and regardless if there's a conversation with the agent, the seller relied on me,
Yeah.
and so to kind of make a long story short, it ended up the gap was about $40,000, $40,000 gap. And the client, even though by the time it got to the point of the sale, the lot had gone up like well above, it went up, this is right through the market when it was peaking. It had climbed like $100,000. So he was well ahead anyways throughout all this, but the gap, there was still $40,000 gap from the original price. So he was ahead, but then there was a gap there. And he came to me and said, Mark, listen, like, ultimately I trusted you.
Yeah.
I'm like, you're right.
Yeah.
And I had
Here's
a decision. That was like really tough. It was like 40 grand, and I had a decision, and the lawyer at the time's like, what do you do? Like, even considering, like, this is crazy. I'm like, he's right. I messed up on this. I got to own it. And so I cut that check for $40,000 to the client. And we'll just say that we never made that mistake again. But ultimately, it was an investment in the reputation. And it goes back to like that genuine love of people and owning your stuff and taking ownership and responsibility. And I think that doing that comes from having a genuine love of people, right? And understanding that your reputation is more than just a commission check ultimately, right? And so
And you also invested in your peace of mind too in that
Yes.
situation, that you can walk away from that with a sense of integrity. I had that too. I had a client call me from the lawyer's office and say, what's this about this rented furnace? And I said, hold on, let me check the paperwork. And then I looked at it, and there was an initial right beside it. So this was back in the day when we used those little red stamps.
Yeah.
So I know we talked about it, but if they didn't hear that or they didn't remember, that's not a them problem. That's a me problem. So
Right.
guess who bought the furnace? Because it's like, maybe I didn't have to do that. If I was a transactional agent, I might have just said, hey, screw you guys. I don't care, right? But I want to be, and this is years later. I remember it. You remember this land situation, right? Like you remember it as a point where your character shone through,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Above and beyond the situation, that you said, okay, I fixed this right. And that person was important enough to me that I did the right thing.
Chuck, you just underlined something that I feel is like such an important part that I just want to really highlight here, is that you got to be able to put your head on the pillow at the end of the day. And what's even, to go further on that point, is the fact that I believe that selling is half of it is believing in what it is that you're selling. And if you don't believe in it, then ultimately you're not going to do a good job selling it. And so if you start shortchanging people, if you start falling short of delivery of great service, that goes to work on your subconscious. And to me, if you keep doing that on an ongoing basis, when you're in front of a potential buyer or seller and you're really selling the service of yourself, I think that will erode your ability to be able to close on new clients ultimately. And so it goes deeper from a mindset standpoint. You're investing in your own mindset and your belief in yourself, because selling is like more about convincing yourself that you're the best, not as I think that's more important than convincing the other person. Like, as soon as you're convinced, we become the best salespeople in the world, right? Like, if you watch a movie and you love the movie, or a coffee shop, or a steak at the restaurant down the road, everybody becomes the best salesperson in the world, right? Because they believe in it so much.
But it's also coming from a centered place, right? Because you meet people at generally very delicate times, right? There's death and divorce and all kinds of job changes and things like that. So the more that you come from a very balanced place, and I think when you do things like that, you tend to kind of lean to the dark side a little bit, right? Like I've always placed a lot of value in that, and about coming to somebody And my only objective is just helping make their life better, whether we work together or not. I mean,
Yeah.
that will or won't happen. And I'm okay with that. I'm at peace with whatever that decision is. But I don't, I just show up saying, okay, how can I make this meeting as valuable as possible for you? That's one of the first
Yeah.
questions I ask.
Yeah. So good. So good. So mindset is a big thing. So for you guys to come in, you're borrowing money from your dad, $20,000. You start in a brand new city. You had zero contacts. Can we maybe talk a little bit more about the mindset that you guys needed to have at the beginning and then maybe throughout scaling up your business that differentiates you from, say, an average agent that's maybe struggling right now?
Well, going back to what I said a little bit ago, like we didn't have a choice, right? So it was about like doing what needed to be done. So we were in like I think I was 26 when we started, and my friends would be going out and having fun, and we worked 7 days a week. Like that work ethic of just putting your head down, focusing, and doing what needed to be done in the beginning really set the foundation for what we experienced after that. Now, being able to grow the team, like it had to happen. It wasn't like almost like a conscious choice because we were so exhausted. Like by the time we went to get coaching on how to grow our team, I mean, we were making, I think I was 29 years old. We just had our first baby, and we were making $400,000 a year at that point, and it wasn't even worth it, right? Because our lives were complete garbage, right? So
Okay.
when we had to really grow the team, like it was out of necessity, it was out of knowing that we couldn't provide like the level of service with how things were at that time.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah, I think we understood at that moment that we were dropping balls
Yeah.
and we didn't want to, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So and also coincided with having our first child and
Hmm.
and all the things that come with that. And you know, like it's one thing for Melissa and I just to be a couple and to just work our butts off and go away on vacation 3 or 4 times a year and just like crash out. But when
Yeah.
you have a family and you want to spend time with your kids and you
Yeah.
want to kind of have that relationship with them,
Hmm.
it requires a different lean. You can only work harder up to a certain
Yeah.
point before you have to work smarter.
Yeah. And the other mindset with growing the team too is that, we understand that we got our ego out of the way. Like people don't have to work with me. They don't have to work with Chuck. They need to work with someone who represents our values.
Mm,
So that
yeah.
was what really, flipping that mindset where it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be the hero all the time. You can make other people be the hero too, right? Your
Yeah,
agents on
and
your
having
team.
good systems helps. So I remember the first time we heard our buyer presentation from one of the agents that worked with us. I thought she's better than I am,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
I looked at
Yeah.
that and I went,
Yeah.
something went off in my head. I thought, oh, okay, wow, like it doesn't have to be me, but I can
Mhm.
have someone who plays to my standard, who
Yeah.
who I would buy a house from. I mean, we've had discussions about this, about hiring
Yeah.
employees and agents, Marcus, where it's like,
Yeah.
would you want to spend time in a car with them driving for
Mhm.
hours? Would you
Right.
would you trust them to be your agent?
Yeah.
And whenever we veered off that, and it seems like
Yeah.
we have to be reminded of
Yeah.
this every couple of years. It's like, it's like we should have maybe thought this through a little
Yeah.
bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whenever, things are kind of going off the path. And Chuck and I, like our biggest weakness is that we keep agents on the team longer than they should be because we are under the impression that we're going to help them. We'll do whatever we need to do. We'll
Yeah.
more training, more whatever it is, we will help them. But at the end of the day, whenever it hasn't worked out, if we asked ourselves, would you have bought a home from that person? Nine times out of 10, it would be no, probably not,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. And you highlighted a really good question if you're looking to bring somebody on is would you drive 6 hours in a car with them and still like them at the end. And
So
you
like
know, that I thought that's just such a good qualifier, right? Because 6 hours is a long time, right? That's a lot of silence there. If you can't just ignore them or turn the radio, and the awkwardness eventually it gets you, and you got to like them at the end as well. That's the filter. And you know what? Actually, that's a good one to think about as well. Like when you're meeting somebody, you have to be likable as well as an
Yeah.
agent. So if you're listening to this,
Yeah.
just think they're probably filtering that same question. You need to be the kind of person that they would want to drive in a car with 6 hours and still like you at the end,
Yeah.
right? Like this is not a transactional of like they look at different agents and you got to be likable.
Yeah.
And so, if you haven't read this book, this helps you. If you don't think, or you think that you can maybe be more likable, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. If you haven't read it, that's just like a classic foundational book that I highly recommend. It'll get you down the right direction. But I'll share a little secret: is you really do need to care about people. You can't fake it, right? That genuine love of people, it's got to be there. So just for the listeners there, to give them context, what does your team look like right now in regards to, staff and number of agents?
So right now we are 5 agents, including Chuck and myself. We have a full-time client care coordinator. We have a lead concierge who is also in an admin position. And then we have a designer slash project manager because we've just separated our staging into a separate business where now we can service other realtors as well in our market area.
Oh, great. So you went and bought all the staging furniture and your warehouse, and so that's a separate business now that you're running as well now. How is that going?
It's just starting. Like this is
Yeah.
something that we went through the lawyers and making the contracts, and we're just starting everything out now. So it's, we'll see how it goes, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, we had all the pieces. We had a talented person that was running it, and so when you have talented team members, Mark, you're very aware of this, that you have to give them headroom to grow, and it's like you could do stuff just for our clients, but and of course that's the focus, but what could happen above and beyond that? How could this turn into something that like a business worth owning kind of thing?
Yeah, I think you nailed it. If you are thinking about doing something like that, I mean, that having a strong leader is something that's a necessity, because your core business, you need to be focusing on helping people buy and sell houses. And if you're out, say doing staging event and yourself, and you don't have somebody strong leading that eventually you'll realize that your value per hour is worth more doing the real estate business. So I think having a strong leader on something like that is like a necessity. So it's amazing you found somebody.
100%.
It's not a high margin business, by the
No.
way, right? Like it would be a tough one to run on its own. It's complementary to what we
That's
do,
right.
so we're okay if the balance sheet is maybe not in an ideal state, but it's it's still like people have just come to us and just said like, wow, like who did this? And it's like, well, we did it in house.
Well, this is something in our multifamily investment firm we look at. So the property management side of it, that is we'll say profit. It's not a big profit center, but by bringing that in house and having an in-house GC, it allows you to have a competitive advantage, right? And so that totally makes sense. To maybe transition, and then we're going to get into rapid fire after this. You're speaking to a real estate agent that's listening and say that they've done well, they are, well capitalized, they don't have any debt, and now they're looking to invest. They have some extra dollars there to invest. What, we'll say, advice or wisdom would you impart to them to help them, say, grow their wealth, where eventually down the road they're selling because they want to, not because they have to?
Yeah.
I've always we started too late. I think we played
Yeah.
it too safe. I think that we sort of hoarded the chips a little bit, and it comes down. I think money is something like the lessons on money are things that you learn from your parents and your grandparents and all those. Like it becomes a generational kind of thing. And we were both strong savers. We were generally more safety driven. And then eventually we just saw that that wasn't getting us far enough ahead. And condos I used to show for 200,000 are now $1 million. And you kind of go, well, we should have latched onto that
Yeah.
train.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
and so, eventually we got into buying some properties, and we still, we're still actively involved in that. And um, yeah, I just think that this whole, I mean, the news over the last little while has been inflation, right? And I think that people need to recognize that inflation is devaluing all of that hard work and all the efforts. And so you have to find a way to outperform
Mhm.
inflation, and it's not going to happen in a savings account,
Yeah.
Mm.
right? So, I mean, you have to be clear about your values. You have to be clear about what's important to you. I find a lot of our clients tend to wake up in their 40s and start
Yeah.
to say, okay, like retirement is
Mhm.
is there. I still have a
Mhm.
lot of working years left, but what is that going to look like? And so we even
Mhm.
did that too, is we kind of said, okay, like in 20 years, like what
Right.
does life look like? How much money would we like to have? We don't have a pension, right?
Mhm.
So as agents, I mean, we all know agents that are 70 years old and still struggling. And so it's one thing to be 70 and want to work.
Yeah.
It's another thing to be 70 and like have to work.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so we just eventually met that reality and said, okay, what's the plan? What is this going to look like?
But
And we should have started earlier,
yeah.
but the next best time to plant a tree is, what do
Right.
they say? It's today, right?
what but as we were investing and looking at opportunities, then we brought those opportunities to our clients. So now we have an
Can you
investment
elaborate
class.
when you say opportunities? What
Yeah.
kind of opportunities? Because Chuck, you like
Yeah.
really set that up really well, and I'm on a cliffhanger. I'm like, what did you do, right?
Yeah,
What
Yeah. Yeah.
for
it's about
investing
your
in your
values. I mean, we
clients?
know real
Okay.
estate. It's I
Yeah.
think anyone in our business who is not investing in real
Mhm.
estate is silly, because it's like we know
Right.
so much about it. I've made a lot of millionaires. Like why? Like I think I should join that club if I've
Yeah.
done that, right? So
Right.
yeah, but it is, and I love what you guys do with
Mhm.
Ferris Capital, and I mean we haven't had the opportunity yet to jump in, but it's
Mhm.
definitely on the list of things we like to do.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Melissa,
Yeah.
was there anything you wanted? You were mentioning something there. I
Yeah.
want to make
So
sure I get it.
as we were going through exploring different opportunities, we use that knowledge to bring it to our clients. So we run an
Mm.
investor class, and what we do differently, because typically people come to us and they say, I want to buy an investment property in
Yeah.
Milton. And we're like, that is not a good idea. There are other places where you're going to make
Yeah.
far more money, where your dollar will go a lot farther. So really like opening up their mind. Like for example, we purchased a place in Calgary. And
Mm.
then next thing you know, 16 of our clients did the same thing,
Mm.
you know?
Yeah.
So I find that as we do things, we tend to
Yeah.
bring those opportunities, and they do them as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it comes down to that education. It's like we're not afraid. We're transparent in how we go about things. We'll tell people what worked well and what didn't, and
Mhm.
and when people feel that that's authentic, then
Yeah.
they say, okay, like
Yeah.
I can see myself in that story too.
Mhm.
100%. And this is where, to me, I think that speaking with, thousands of agents through the years, it seems to be like, I wish I would have bought more real estate seems to be a consistent
Yeah.
theme. And Chuck, you nailed it. You made many millionaires through real estate. And I think that just the conversation, I think, is just so important, because no matter how much money you make in real estate, the reality is that you'll never, it's much more difficult, as you had mentioned, Chuck, to just save it and put it in the bank. But
Mhm.
if you just buy along the way, I've never met anybody that said, oh, I bought too much real estate. Now,
Yeah.
of course, you don't want to get over leveraged. You want to make sure the properties can carry themselves and
Mhm.
all the rest of it, right? And have an emergency fund there so you don't get, pinched. Make sure you lock in your rates if you can't afford a variable, if it goes up a little bit, or
Mhm.
adjustable rate mortgage. So this is just something there that the conversation, if you're like, for the listeners out there, if just buy one more property And
Yeah.
and that's where we experienced the same thing, guys, where we had investors and they just like, hey, listen, I want to buy property. And it's like, it doesn't quite make sense. So that's why we're kind of like forced to look and build a solution. And that's why we, we're buying down in Florida and the Carolinas, and we're in the multifamily space there now, just because like there wasn't a lot of options in the market. And so I just think regardless of whatever you do, I mean, you guys in Calgary, I think that's great. Just get one more, just do one more right along the way. And if you just buy along the way, that is so good, because as real estate agents is such a beautiful industry. But at the end of your career, like you had said, we want to work. The goal is that you're working because you get to work, not because you have to work. And I think that there can be a bitterness that comes if you work your whole life and you're still working because you have to, not because you want to. It changes the game. So I'm just by bringing this conversation, I think my hope is that it serves the listeners to just be like, you know what? Yeah, maybe I should do that. And just that one extra purchase can totally transform your future. So,
Yeah.
I,
I've
I
always thought of it like if information, if there's a lack of information, there's fear, right? So
right.
that's why, like if you were at the top of a Black Diamond ski hill and you had the information, the wisdom, and all the experience of doing that, you would be excited to go skiing on this challenging hill. But I mean,
Right.
if it's your first time skiing, it's terrifying. And
Mhm.
so a lot of investors, I think, or like people who want to get into investing have this, oh
Mhm.
my God, like I mean, look at this hill. I don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
And so definitely modeling, like showing somebody what it looks like
Mhm.
has been important for us with Calgary, and saying,
Yeah.
okay, this is every little part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like just give them
Mhm.
information, even if it kind of spreads them out a little bit in the beginning, because some people want to invest. I'll ask them where they want to invest. They'll say, "Oh, it could be here, it could be here, it could be
Mhm.
here," and it's like
Mhm.
we know the paradox of choice. Barry Schwartz,
Mm,
right? He's got a TED Talk. He's got a great book. But the more options you give someone, the less likely they are to
that's
take
right.
any of
Mhm.
I love.
them.
Yeah.
And
Go.
and so it's about, I think you almost have to de-narrow the focus and
Yeah.
Yeah.
then hone them in, right? It's like the 5-watt light bulb that
Mhm.
can barely light a room, but the
Mm.
5-watt laser cuts through steel.
Such wisdom. I love that analogy of the black diamond. If you're a great skier, you would, be excited for that. But if not, that would scare you. So it's like fear of the unknown. And I think that ties so well to investing. So it's like education is a big part of it and understanding. But also when you're working with a client and maybe it's their first time selling a home or it's their first time buying a home, I think that fear is still there. And that's why they're just not maybe taking action. So the education part of it and going back to your service when marketplace experience, getting them out there is all part of removing that fear so that they can take action and be excited about it. So guys, this has been awesome. We could keep talking for another hour easily, but are you guys ready for the rapid fire part of the talk?
Sure. I think.
All right. So first question is favorite book. So the favorite book, we'll just say that maybe has made the biggest impact,
Yeah.
or the one that you'd recommend
Mhm.
to maybe an agent that is maybe struggling out there today, and they think they're maybe thinking about getting out of the business.
Hmm. I I would say for me, like what had the biggest impact when we started in the business, like this wouldn't be my favorite book, but it definitely changed how we approach things, would be the E-Myth.
Yeah.
That was a big one for us.
Okay. By Michael Gerber. That's very good. And very good. What was it about that book that I mean system?
Yes.
I'm answering my own question.
Yeah.
Systems, right?
It's
You
what was it,
yeah,
the pie maker, where she could only make so many pies, and then
yeah,
how that business was leveraged. It's the same thing no matter what
yeah,
business you're in, right?
yeah,
You need to, it doesn't have to be you all the time.
yeah. No, for sure. Well said. All
Hmm.
right.
Thematically, when we talk about these touch points in our process, which we did earlier, I think that there's the part in the E-Myth that stands out to me about there's the match, the mint, the newspaper,
Mhm.
and and I don't know, I think it was a cup of coffee. I think those were the four things. And so on their own, they're not really substantial investments for that hotel. That's if you remember the example.
Yeah.
But they're the right thing at the right time, right?
Yeah.
Like for example, I think when they booked the room, is they said, "What newspaper do you read?" And then they delivered that newspaper to the
Yeah.
room, right?
Yeah.
I
So
mean,
good.
a newspaper's less than $1, but how great is it to have that sitting there?
Yeah. That intentionality is
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah. For me, you mentioned it actually. I love Robert Cialdini. I love his
Yeah.
his stuff. I love the book Influence. So he's a
Yeah.
professor of social psychology in Arizona, and so he backs all of his statements with research. And so he talks about in the book the 6 weapons of influence. So you talked about reciprocity. There's authority, right? So you would automatically be, I guess, more willing to trust someone, let's say, in a lab jacket that looks like a doctor, than somebody in
Right.
gym shorts, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And social proof, right? The power of referrals or reviews, and people saying things about it. Commitment, we see that even in sometimes in people's political leans, right? That if you say that I'm a supporter of person X or person Y,
Yeah.
that all of your actions are kind of in support of that. It's a great book. Anyway, he writes a few different books. He got one that's really interesting. I think the example is in the book, yes, where he had a waiter, right? So they went to the table and they had 3 different examples. And forgive me, I may not remember this perfectly, but the first one would be they just brought the check and then saw how much of a tip they got. Right. And then they brought the check with a couple of mints. You
Yeah.
go to a
Yeah.
restaurant, get a couple of
Yeah.
mints. And I think, the tips were a little bit higher.
Yeah.
But then what they did was they delivered the check and they had some mints there. And then the waiter walked away and then turned back around and said, "You guys, you know what? You've been such great customers. Here's a few more mints."
Yeah.
And the tips went through the roof, right?
Yeah.
It was just, right? So just things like that. I love hearing about if you love people and you're fascinated by people, I think Robert Cialdini is a very interesting guy to check out.
Yeah, and that actually is part of that principle of commitment, because they labeled them, the waiter labeled them as great customers, and great customers tip, right, as well. So that's such a good example there, Chuck. Very good. All right, so 3 words. So we'll go to both because you guys are partners in the business. So 3 words, okay? If people were to explain you in 3 words, Melissa, what would they be for you?
It would be gritty, direct, and probably caring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chuck?
Yeah. I nailed 2 of those, by the way, in the car. She asked me that question.
And
For
by the way,
me,
I didn't tell you this. I asked our men that question, and they said, "You're generous,"
Okay, that's a
which was
good one.
nice. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
would absolutely.
There her reviews coming up soon there, Melissa? Yeah. No.
For me, I would say loyalty is important to me. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I'm a loyal person. I've been told that by some of my closest friends. I place a lot of value in hard work.
Yeah.
Right? So hardworking would be another one. And prepared, I think, is another one. I hate being unprepared. If
Yeah.
I'm going to a meeting and there's something, but I need to know everything before.
Yeah.
I place a lot of importance in
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. No, I think you guys nailed both of them. And I'd say I'd throw a blanket of generosity over both of you guys as well, from what I've seen.
Thank you. We'll wrap ourselves in that blanket.
Yeah, you do that. Well, you guys, I mean, you made your own blanket there, right? I'm just telling you what's there. All right, and last question here, guys. What advice would you give the listeners out there? Any final advice?
I would say if you're an agent, I'm going to flip kind of how you think about running your business. We talked about how it's not just helping people buy and sell homes. And the biggest struggle I think most realtors face is not that they don't know how to help people do that, it's client acquisition. And I think that solving that problem of how you're going to acquire and attract clients into your business has to be your all-consuming focus, because that's the difference between staying in the business and being super successful. Right?
Yeah. Great advice. Chuck?
Mine would be two parts. So number one is be the agent that you'd want to have, right? Like I think that's like it's just the mirroring of that experience, right? Build yourself up to the point where you'd want to work with yourself. Because some people, guess what? Like you're not running a business that you would use, right?
Yeah,
You would,
that's good.
yeah, you'd probably fire yourself if
Yeah.
you were an employee. But anyway, it's always a work in progress, right? But I think the other thing is you have to understand, I think, the legal side of things too. I probably spend 20% of my career fixing other people's mistakes. You know, you get leases that come in and it's like, you realize there's 5 violations of the Residential Tenancies Act in here. I mean, it's fascinating to me that people, I mean, real estate school will kind of teach you to not get sued, but it teaches you nothing about how to run a business. And I think you have to, it's imperative that you become a master. You need to know what it says on all of the listing agreements and buyer paperwork and, you know, all the fine print in the offers. I mean, that's, I say this, like, I feel like I shouldn't have to say it to some agents that, you know, it's like that should just be obvious. But unfortunately, with the way that we, you know, we kind of, it's an industry, I think, that eats its young in many ways, right?
Yeah.
So it's, you know, we've got to foster that on all levels of real estate to be a master of the legal side of the transaction too.
Well, there you have it, guys. Mastery and becoming a market expert there. Very good thought to finish this up with, guys. Now, how can the listeners reach out to you if they want to send, maybe talk just briefly about, you know, what areas do you serve and how can they send you business, or the agents that are listening, if they have any clients looking to move to your area?
I remember you did this really funny thing at a seminar, and really interesting, well done too, is that there was a red dot on the screen. You said, okay, focus on the red dot.
Yeah.
And then that expanded and said, okay, this is where the Ferris team works.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do now. I forgot, but that's, I think, for the reminder. Yeah.
So if you dropped a dot in Milton and probably did about a 30 or 40 minute radius, so we end up helping people in Mississauga and Burlington and Halton Hills and stuff like that. We're based out of Milton. We love it here. That I would want you to think of Milton first, but if you ever need any help in any of the surrounding areas, we can do that too.
So people can get a hold of me through Instagram. That's probably the easiest way, Mel Charlton Real Estate. Or you can also follow the team, Charlton Advantage Team. Feel free to rip off our ideas, our client events, anything that you see there, please feel free. It's there for you to see.
Yeah. And all the stuff is at charltonadvantage.com too. Like, even if you wanted to sign up for like the Milton Daily Homes and some of the mailing lists that we do, like, you can just feel free to subscribe there and see what that's about.
Very cool. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show, guys. It was a real pleasure having you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks for listening, guys. There you have it, generosity. And if you like the show, please share and subscribe it to other real estate agents you think would get value from it. And let's keep building a community of full out real estate agents together. I love you guys, and keep on going full out.